Welcome to the Crazy Wisdom Podcast. I've got Brad Costanzo here, and he is the founder and CEO of Accelerated Intelligence. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Hopefully, I don't know if I'll help you out with the wisdom part, but maybe the crazy part I can I can cover.
Yeah, that's why I started the show. Is like I felt like I was going crazy in 2018, 2019, and wanted to figure out whether there was any wisdom behind it. Still unclear. I'm still figuring it out. And for all
They
my
say
guests as
that
well.
your mess is your message.
Well, that's cool. That's cool. What's the deal with that one? Where'd you find that? Where'd you learn that one?
I think I've just heard that from personal development circles, and throughout my career. I don't know who maybe made that popular. It could have been Brene Brown or somebody. Where it's much more so like people who've gone through traumatic life events, who've had, made all the wrong choices, hit rock bottom, whether they were like alcoholics and, hit rock bottom and whatever, or they've just made a lot of mistakes, that the mess you've made is your message to help others, right? So people can actually, people have created tremendous careers out of turning the mess they've made out of their lives and the turnaround into their message to others. So I've always thought it was kind of poignant but powerful as well.
The original name for the show before I settled on Crazy Wisdom was Beautifully Broken.
I like
so yeah, broken in this beautiful way, and it reminds me of the Japanese. They have the one where there's gold. They put together the portrait or the
Yeah,
statue.
what do they call that? That's I know the name of that. It's I can't think of the name. There's a whole name to that style where it's like with the golden streaks through it. I've tried to tell my wife at times, honey, my mess is my message, and she's like, it is not. Clean the damn dishes.
Not
It
when
doesn't
you're
work so well with her.
yeah. Okay, so accelerated intelligence. I love the name accelerated intelligence. We had a great conversation a couple months ago when we were talking about doing this podcast. AI. What is the relationship between personal development and AI?
So I look at it in several ways. So, and I'm going to cover that with two answers. So number one, the reason I called it Accelerated Intelligence, the company, when I was really getting into this space, and I was looking for a domain name, I was like, I found it. I'm like, that looks really cool. But then it actually like acceleratedintelligence.ai. But at the same time, it really hit the nail on the head with my philosophy on this stuff, because artificial intelligence is just a tool, right? It's a highly leverageable tool, but it's just a tool. And in most cases, the word artificial is a negative connotation in life, right? Like that person's so artificial, or artificial sweetener, artificial grass, artificial this, that, and the other. But yet we're expected to accept artificial intelligence with open arms. But in reality, we don't want artificial intelligence. We want to accelerate what we're able to do with our intelligence, right? And intelligence is the seed of everything else that humans create. It's and whether it is intelligence about technology, about business intelligence, marketing intelligence, emotional intelligence, social intelligence, it's spiritual intelligence. You can name all of them. That's really what we want. And then this gave me the breadth to take my platform beyond just the tech aspects, because I like the tech. My career is helping businesses understand, demystify, and enable them with artificial intelligence to make more money, to save more time. But ultimately, where my passion lies is using it to increase human potential. And I love the ability for AI to unleash creative resistance and unlock dormant creative abilities. When it comes to how it works with personal development, AI is already proven to be such an amazing tool to give us insights on ourselves. I mean, just simply going into ChatGPT, if you've been using it a lot with memory on, and asking it to deconstruct your personality traits, your psyche. In fact, one of the things, anybody could try this. A friend of mine gave me this prompt the other day, and it's so simple. Go into ChatGPT and say, based on everything you know about me, describe me in one word. And it's great. It's great. Like, you can try that right now if you want. But mine was catalyst, and then it actually did an explanation of why. But so in the field of personal development, a lot of people get nervous. They either don't want to spend the money or the time or be vulnerable enough to talk to a therapist. And I believe that most people in this world need therapy. They need somebody who understands human psychology to talk to. But most of us, myself, I've never hired a therapist. I've hired coaches and mentors, but not therapists. And so this is giving people access to a form of therapy they've never had. I think the question is, will they take the advice that the AI insights give them and really sit with it and think about it, meditate on it, and then take actions based upon what it says? Because if I go to you, whether you're a friend, a mentor, a colleague, or a therapist, and you give me advice, I'm much more likely to take a human's advice than I am a machine's. But I do believe that going forward, the ability for machines to recognize patterns in our personal lives is going to help change lives for the better. For the worse too, but hopefully for the better.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about that. Before we go down the rabbit hole, I want to. So the rabbit hole will be related to AI psychosis, which is a rabbit hole of its own, which I'm sure you've heard of, and there's a lot of interesting territory I want to talk about. But you brought up the word artificial, and I had some insights into this word. I've been reading this book by Francis Yates, who is a historian. Who is going back into memory palaces and the history of memory palaces, and how it got taken by Neoplatonic magic and then actually created science. Our whole scientific revolution was based off of these crazy guys who had rediscovered the works of Plato and all in second century AD Roman magic, basically. And so in this, it says artificial, of or belonging to art. That's originally what artificial meant, was of or belonging to art, and then it became artifice. There's some way that it got into our current understanding. Oh, by the early 15th century, artificial came to mean made by man, contrived by human skill and labor. And from the 16th century onward, it was applied to anything made in imitation of or as a substitute for something natural.
Oh, interesting. I love little trivial tidbits like that. That's awesome.
It's my whole life is researching trivial tidbits. We'll get into that later. So AI psychosis, what do you think about AI psychosis? And do you think it's real? Do you think it's something that's hyped up to clickbait now that clickbait is going away?
So how would you define, I just want to make sure I'm contextually, how would you define AI psychosis?
I've seen it. Yeah, I've seen it a few times with people I'm not directly connected with, but mutual acquaintances, and that interaction, and it was before it started becoming a clickbait thing, made me realize that I do think it's real. I think it's, and I'm not a therapist. Nobody listen to what I'm about to say and take it as fact, but schizophrenia. There's a schizophrenic thing which is sort of shoved off to the side in a lot of our modern culture. And that schizophrenic thing is interesting. And I think because it's sort of like shoved off and not really given a place inside of our culture, it can lead to autodidactic loops. I actually got into this in 2015 and 2016, back when Google was really good. And I just found all these spiritual practices and basically got myself into a spiritual hole. The rock bottom we were discussing, and it was just like a autodidactic. I was not asking anybody else. I was just in this loop, and eventually I broke out of it with the help of human beings who were very wise, are very wise, and so I think it's the same thing that I went through, but with a much more intense intelligence, and so which is sycophantic in nature. And if you know how these things work, like it's just like token predicting. But if you don't know how these things work, it can be magical. It can feel magical, and I think that's where it started. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that it's exactly like every other technology out there. It's neither good or bad. It's how people use it, but it's also not necessarily how people use it intentionally, but there are some people who are much more gullible and not, right? The whole idea that we're all created equal is not true. Interesting. The law, but there's some really dumb people out there. George Carlin, I love George Carlin's, my favorite quote is, think about how dumb the average person is, and then realize that mathematically half of them are dumber than that. So I've always loved that concept. And so the truth is, there are some extremely gullible people. They will end up using AI. They will start talking to it, whether these are the ones who are using it for romantic bonding and emotional, support, etc. And they will get caught up, and they will feel as though it's real, etc. Those are going to be the unfortunate casualties of the technology. The exact same way as that social media is such a such a
strange thing that has entered our consciousness and our egregores.
best and worst thing, right? Like, so yeah, there's going to be a lot of casualties of it, but I think the goal is to minimize those as much as possible and then not be one. But
what do you think about cognitive armor? Do you think it's something because it's something we talk about in our AI Whisperers group, because we about 2 weeks ago, I do a post every week, which is the high signal, like what happened this week that was really important that people should be aware of. And so 2 weeks ago, I got a little bit into the psychosis thing, and because here's the other thing, which I would love to talk about with you, which is that the hype machine in Silicon Valley is going full steam ahead, and they're doing it. It's the same thing. If you know how Silicon Valley works, you know why they're doing it. They're doing it because they have to market to people, and they have to raise their next round, and the bigger the talk, and so OpenAI is talking about, AGI has already reached. You got Mark Zuckerberg saying we're creating the machine god, all these different things, and so that that's not different from the psychosis, because I think that's actually leading right into the psychosis. I forgot where I was going with that, but do you have any interesting things to say?
Not a lot. I mean, I thought when you talk about cognitive armor,
that's right.
Like
Cognitive
protecting yourself from that, right? So, I mean, I talk a lot. I don't know if it's the exact same thing. I kind of talk about. I wrote an article on this, the sovereign mind, how to keep your brain while everybody's outsourcing theirs, and that it is so easy. It's the same way as, I mean, I use my GPS everywhere, even when I'm going somewhere I've been a million times. One of the reasons I use it is because it will redirect me if there's bad traffic. So there's a utilitarian thing there. But I'm completely, I'm highly inept now directionally, like when I'm driving. I used to have a great sense of direction. My sense of direction has gone down a little bit because I just rely on that. And it's the exact same thing with AI is you have to understand the ability to make you lazy. It's very easy to succumb to that. And I have to catch myself going, just because I can do this quick, like I'm going to get, the more I do this, the stupider I'm going to get. It's no different than, I force myself to go to the gym. I don't love to go to the gym. I'm in good shape because I go to the gym, but I don't love it. I would much rather be sitting around watching TVs. But, in the past, prior to the gym, we didn't need the gym because we had to work in the fields. We had to work on the farm. We had to work with our bodies. Now that, over the past few generations, we've become a white collar workforce for the most part, and we don't have to do those things. And a lot of people don't. That's why the majority of America is a bunch of sloppy fat asses. And I just got back from 3 weeks in Europe. You don't see that as much, right? You see it over here. You've got lazy people who just don't go to the gym. And so those of us who force ourselves to do the things we don't want so that we can stay in shape are the ones who are going to excel. That's how you put the cognitive armor on, is you just realize, if I don't do this, I'm going to be an idiot. So my little sovereign mind framework is first think intentionally. I like to come up with my own hypothesis or do the first thing without AI, just so that I do not atrophy. Even when the AI makes it easy, I'm like, nope, do it first. And then I try to collaborate intelligently with it, think through it, enhance it, critique it, etc. And then just remind myself that I'm the bookends of anything I produce with it. I'm the first, I have to define what I want, and then I have to refine what I get. And there's so many people who will only do the first two. They'll say, here's what I want, create this for me. And then they'll put out AI written slop out there that everybody sees, and we're all sick of it. It's that last part, that refinement, that is so critical to maintaining this sovereign mind or having this cognitive armor, and it just keeps you from using it as a crutch.
And that brings to mind the human in the loop. Neil Ferguson, he a historian who I loved his book called Ascent of Money, and we're going to get into deflationary economics later, and it's related to that. But he also went on somebody's podcast recently and said that he wants to build a cloister, and because students are going to use this, they're going to cheat everything. They already are. And there's no way to stop it, from my understanding. So he says, no phones, no nothing, go inside the cloister, and you can only read and write. And that's the way that education is going to do it. I think it's a bit extreme. I
actually don't like that. I like it to a point, but I don't like it completely, because it's it's not that different than saying no computers. Like, people are using computers. Computers, they're here. They're not, it's not artificial intelligence isn't going away. So I don't think that people educationally should avoid it and go, no, you're not going to use it. I think aspects of it, like, hey, for this, we're going to just do X. In fact, I think one of the easiest ways, if I was in control of the education system, the first thing I would do is I would go back to what's called the Trivium method of classical education.
Ooh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of the Trivium?
No, I've not.
So the Trivium is a way, there's the Trivium and the Quadrivium. And if I remember correctly, the Trivium is a framework that has been taught since like ancient Greece, which
Wow.
just means grammar, logic, and rhetoric.
Ooh.
So the grammar part is you have to learn the foundations. If you're learning a new language, the first thing you have to learn is the grammar of it. Now the logic is like all the, how this works how do you do sentence construction? How do you conjugate verbs? How do you do all this? Now the rhetoric part, rhetoric is basically speaking it. So since time began, when people were really, or since classical education started, it was learn the basics, then the logic, and now go speak it, and in essence teach somebody else, or prove that you know it through rhetoric. And rhetoric can be debate, or it can just be speech. We got into the industrial education side like in the 1800s, where we followed the Prussian education system in order to create it's like mass production of students, just like rote memory, educate them, remove critical thinking. We need people to work in the factories. We just need them to be smart enough automatons, and we will keep the classical education. The Trivium is still done in the elite schools, like the Ivy League elite. They still do it, right? And therefore, like I can't remember how many. Like I had a speech class in college, and every once in a while throughout grade school, high school, and college, every once in a while would I have to give a speech, and it was maybe represented 1% or 5% of my academic life, like most people who've been through the mass education system. But if you want to know, like you can let somebody use AI to write their paper on, macroeconomics or whatever it is. Put them up in front of class without notes now.
Yeah, there you go. That's
You
it.
know,
That's,
and
yeah.
prove you know it, and then debate. And
Yeah.
in fact, I think those two things, not only are they lost, but it's the single best way to learn something is to teach others and interact and to defend your ideas. And instead of going in history class in junior year of high school going, all right, what year was the Battle of the Bulge? Talk about what, instead ask, was World War II good or bad? Discuss from both perspectives,
Yeah.
right? Argue it. Now I think what we can do is we can let them use AI to get
Research
as much
and
of the knowledge and
content.
research.
Yeah.
And then they have to turn on their critical thinking part. So I think that to me is the easiest way. Just bring back mandatory rhetoric.
It's really good. The Prussian model of education is a great segue into Bismarck. It goes back to Ascent of Money, the book that I just mentioned by Neil Ferguson. He mentioned how Bismarck basically innovated on the insurance model, where before Bismarck, there was no concept of insurance for the middle class, insurance for these people. And then Bismarck, not from the left, but from the right, essentially established a welfare state that he was the first one to be like, okay, here's the welfare state. And part of that was just put people into the factories, or keep the children away so that humans could go into the factory and teach them this thing so that they can then go into the factory later. But then the left, particularly with FDR, took over that idea and then realized it. And then, interesting enough, in Perón in the 1960s, Perón in Argentina actually is really similar to Bismarck. So it kind of like flips back and forth of like who can get the welfare state ball, and that's feels like it's gonna collapse very soon, just because it's so in the education model, it's just not prepared for the future. Yeah. What do you think of that?
Yeah, no, I tend to agree with it. I haven't read his stuff, but I do tend to agree with exactly what you're saying. There's another great book if you ever want to go down this, called Dumbing Us Down by John Taylor Gatto, Gatto. So one of the most amazing books on education that is just jaw-dropping, with how he brings receipts showing how intentionally dumbed down the populace was, with quotes from everybody from Woodrow Wilson to a lot of the other people. Like he brought receipts, and it's like, wow.
It was real. And it's like, and this is the craziest thing about where we're headed. Because it feels like I have nothing wrong with the elite. I come from the elite circles, but at the same time, there's so much animosity from the elite, particularly like the real guys, the guys in the room making the real decisions. There's something really interesting there. I haven't thought too much about it, but
I look at it, the whole concept of the elite versus the masses, etc. Yes, there are some evil, nefarious people, etc. Some of them are just doing it out of also out of fear, and disdain for the. I mean, heck, everybody is an elitist to a degree. I'm an elitist against absolutely stupid people, just stupid idiots, low class. I'm elitist. I look down at them and I think I'm better than them. Right now, does that make me a bad person? No, I don't mean I think I'm a better, whatever. But yeah, I don't want to be around them. I look at them like, I can't believe you have a vote, right? There is a big, and if anybody says that there's not a big part of them that is somewhat elitist on that, I think they're a complete and utter liar. We're hardwired, natured to do that. It doesn't mean we're bad. It's just like, who are you? What have you done? Especially the higher you get in the echelons. I also believe that people in power do what people who aren't in power would do if they were in power, right? I think it's natural. People in power do what people who aren't in power would do if they're in power, right? It's, we're all just a bunch of monkeys doing what monkeys do.
And that's the interesting thing, because the welfare state kind of created this idea that everybody could have the same power, and it was very egalitarian, but also very dishonest, because essentially you can't. There's no way that humans don't get together and form circles with hierarchies. It's a product of our animal nature. Is that right?
It's 100%. I was literally just reading about this it was an X post today. I still have to get used to saying X instead of Twitter, but but there was a study called the cave, something about cave. I want to say I liked it. I'm just looking this up here real quick, but it was really, really interesting about cave robbers, robber cave. Hold on, robber cave experiment. I gotta find it. Anyway, I found it earlier. It was back in like the 50s or 60s when this guy took about like 22-year-old Oklahoma kids. Like they were all maybe like 12 or 14 years old, and they were all almost exact. Like none of them really knew each other, but they were all the exact same age, same race, same everything. It's like we want them to be as uniform as possible. And they took them to summer camp. So one summer camp, one bus they took, and they let these kids hang out for like a week by themselves, and another one, they came up with names. We're the Eagles, we're the Rattlers. They didn't even know there was going to be another group. So then they were doing something separate, and then once they were at the camp or whatever, they got to meet each other. Now they didn't introduce, hey, this is the other team. They just like, oh, look, there's another group here. Within 48 hours, it was vitriolic fighting, resource, everything. They separated themselves into camps. And it wasn't just. It started off like, oh, well, no, this is our ball field. No, this is ours. Well, let's play for it. And then it became like vandalism. Within 48 hours, it was Lord of the Flies.
Yeah. And that's basically, go for it. Yep.
Yeah. Anyway, it's just that's it. It goes back to human nature. And if you look back now, we go back to, I don't want to get too far off this subject. If you look back at the elites are absolutely doing some stuff to keep down the masses. Well, and it's in their best interest. Like you blame them, but you don't blame them. They're there to protect what's theirs. Right, the financial elite, the ones who started the Federal Reserve, the ones who run the banking systems, the ones that the big corporate oligopolies, they got a lot to lose. People with a lot to lose protect what's theirs.
Yeah, interesting.
Right, so you can look at it as they're bad, they're evil, or they're just self-interested, like we all are. So this is one of the reasons I love Bitcoin. Just to like talk about a segue, it's we were talking about economics. If you want a revolution against the elites that who control, especially if you control the money, you control the world, and the elites do control the money, you can't beat them, you can't outspend them, you can't buy more firepower. I think it was Mises who said, was it Mises or Hayek? What did Hayek say about government money? I should be able to quote this because it's one of my favorite quotes. But he said something like, "I don't believe we'll ever have a sound money again until we take it out of the hands of the
With the Federal Reserve.
yeah." But he said, "I don't believe we shall ever have good money again before we take the thing out of the hands of the government."
Yeah.
But he said, "But we cannot." I'm looking for the whole thing. And the full quote is something about the only way to do it, you cannot just take it from them. You have to introduce some sly roundabout way of something that replaces it, which they can't stop. And this was written in I want to say the 80s. So he's describing Bitcoin like you can't beat them at their own game. You have to start a new game that they cannot do. So the people who invest in Bitcoin, you could think of it as like, if you don't know anything about it, it's just a speculative crypto. But if you understand what it is, it's a silent, nonviolent, societal financial revolution disguised as a get-rich-quick scheme, because you're taking their power away in the one thing they can't control it. So you vote.
But now they've it's so interesting what's going on with Bitcoin right now.
Yeah, governments in Wall Street are co-opting it.
Yeah.
But I look at it like this. It was always going to happen. If you ever want it to be mainstream, you have to Trojan horse it into them. So you Trojan horse it Wall Street sees it as a get-rich-quick scheme. They're like, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's going to replace the dollar, and maybe it never will. But we're going to get rich off of it. Cool. There's your Trojan horse. But the metaphor I like to use real quickly is when NASA sends a rocket to outer space, we always send it to get into another planet's orbit to slingshot around the gravity of that planet and slingshot it further. Bitcoin was shot into orbit. It's getting unintentionally slingshot around the ones with the biggest gravity. They're going to be
sucking it all in. So I'm so curious about the stable coins because I've been doing a lot of really interesting research into the stable coins.
Yeah.
There's an analysis which I probably most agree with, that the U.S. government is in some trouble.
Yep.
Although it's really interesting that the U.S. government's in some trouble and was trying to get Powell to change the Fed and open up the floodgates for the low interest rates. And definitely probably the funniest moment in the last 100 years of history was watching Powell say no to Trump on television. Was the funniest thing.
That was
but stablecoins, is it the milkshake theory in practice, or is it the U.S. government trying to bring Bitcoin into its sphere through the stablecoin?
I think it's more so the second one. So as I understand it, one of the big reasons that they're for it is now monetary policy is no longer being like it.
The Fed.
I think the Fed basically took it over, and they realized, look, not the Fed, the Treasury. So now it's all administrative based. One of the biggest.
The Fed.
What's that?
It's the Treasury versus the Fed. The Treasury is seeing the stable coins as a way to do monetary.
To create demand for the dollars. Because I think the stat may be slightly wrong, but I think Tether is maybe the 6th or 8th largest holder of U.S. Treasuries. Because, because they're backed, supposedly, people argue they're unaudited, but so is the Fed, that it has to back one to one. So if you go buy Tether because you want to interact in the crypto sphere, they buy treasuries and other cash equivalents, right? But mainly treasuries. They're like the 8th largest. They own more treasuries than Germany does, and therefore now the more that the U.S. government blesses and gives regulatory clarity to the crypto market, especially stable coins, the more people and institutions are likely to buy stable coins. Well, if they buy stable coins, now they're basically just saying, look, you have to back these one-to-one, like with, in essence, risk-free assets. But I say that with a smirk. But with treasuries. So that creates a new artificial demand for treasuries that prior to this was only done by either getting governments or big companies or the Fed. Like, we don't need you guys anymore. There's something like $11 trillion in money markets and other stuff that, and if they, so the more that they encourage the crypto, environment, the more demand for stablecoins. The more demand for stablecoins, the more demand for dollars. But conversely, the more demand for stablecoins, the more demand for Bitcoin and other and other crypto Bitcoin projects. But so now they're like, hey, hey, Powell, drop the rates because we have to refinance trillions of dollars of debt, and it's going to break us if you don't. And Powell says, nope. They're like, all right, cool. We're going to go through the back door, and we're going to tap into a whole new demand for stablecoins, which is going to let us continue to create money. And
it's going to be the banks. It's going to be the banks who build the new stable coins, right? I got the stats here from ChatGPT for as of spring summer 2025. Tether owns 64 to 68% of the stablecoin market. USDC Circle, I believe the Coinbase associated one, owns 22 to 28%. DAI, which now I'm most excited about given the kind of other stuff that's going on in the U.S. government, is only 4 to 5%, and there's another 2% collectively. Those numbers all make sense. So, what do you think on that? Do you have any further thoughts?
I mean, my thought is that, the government is going to continue to print. It's the only thing they have, but the way they print, everybody thinks that the Federal Reserve creates money. It doesn't. Banks create money.
Yeah, interesting.
Federal Reserve enables the individual banks to create money. And so they're going to continue to do what they're going to continue to do. They're going to push asset prices up. They're going to continue to print. They're going to find ways to borrow money, and one of the ways to borrow money is through issuing T-bills. Well, one of the ways to issue T-bills and have a buyer is to encourage crypto adoption. So
now the big banks, banks create money, and now they're going to issue stablecoins.
That's from what I understand.
Based on U.S. treasuries. So it's. Do you remember the M2? Is it M2? Where do the treasuries fit in? I'm going to go research this.
I'm not sure exactly. I always get confused. I know M2 is like the main one that's monitored versus like M1, M3. Like I think M1 is like what's in savings accounts and checkings accounts. M2 is like the biggest number that we're looking at. It's already increased and it's continuing, and it's their only option. In the world of macroeconomics and governmental macroeconomics, governments only have 4 options when shit gets out of control.
What are the 4 options?
They can increase taxes.
Okay.
They can encourage austerity.
Yeah.
Meaning, okay, guys, let's not spend so much. Let's do this, or let's cut all the things.
Argentina.
They can print. Yeah. And there's one more. What was the fourth one? There's a fourth one that is somewhat negligible. I can't remember exactly what it is off the top of my head. I'm sure it'll come to me. But it's like it never gets done. You can only raise taxes so much. And once you start to raise taxes to a point, the people who control the damn government say, hey, stop that. Like, we run this stuff. Quit your shit. Stop. And austerity doesn't work for very long, because the have-nots rebel because austerity hurts the lower and middle class.
Yeah.
Then they rebel, or they vote you out. But the one thing that most people, go back to Carlin, think about how dumb the average person is. I'd say 80 to 90% of the world doesn't understand anything about money, and they do not understand how invisible of theft inflation is. Yep. They just see prices going up, but they don't see how nefarious that.
They do see it in Argentina. This is the most interesting thing I've been.
Yeah, because they've been through because they've been on the extreme end of it.
Yeah.
Folks in the U.S. and Europe have not been on the extreme end.
Yeah. No idea.
No,
definitely agree that 80% of the population in the United States has no idea. Although the millennials and the Zoomers are starting to understand a little bit because the U.S. did go. Why?
There's 2 reasons why. Number one, Bitcoin.
Yep.
And so they've gotten into Bitcoin or crypto, and the minute you start to get into it, it's confusing. You start to read about it. The minute you read about it, those people who aren't just trying to get rich off meme coins and are actually studying, okay, what is the reason this exists? And then you go to the reason, and I'm just going to use Bitcoin as an example because it's really the only one that truly matters, although stable coins are very important. Bitcoin wouldn't exist if it wasn't a solution it wouldn't be valuable if it wasn't a solution to a problem. Nothing would. Things only have value in relation to the value of the solution it's providing. So in order to know what it's a solution to, you have to know what's broken. In order to know what's broken, you need to know how something's supposed to work. And it doesn't take long to just go back into simple Austrian economics to go, wait a minute. Oh, okay, this is fixing this, and the whole $21 million supply cap is important because it can't be inflated. Well, why is that important? Well, because you look at what is being inflated and what that means, that they're creating so much money, so every dollar you hold in your savings account is it's getting less and less. And in order to prevent that, it means that you have to invest your money and take risks that you are not an expert investor. You do not know about this stuff. So you're forced to buy real estate, you're forced to buy stocks, and people typically buy real estate and stocks. Most people buy high and sell low because they don't put money in investments until they see the investments already doing well, which is why most like Bitcoin and crypto entrants get in when we're 3/4 through the bull market because they're dumb. They're ignorant, and this is just human nature. And so now, Gen Zs, millennials, and Gen Xers like me we've seen the pattern. We're like, wait a minute, I'm reading about this. I've read The Creature from Jekyll Island. I've read this. This shit's intentional. Like, you guys this is not just like you've engineered this.
Yeah.
You SOBs. So now I think the younger generations are feeling more vulnerable or like taken advantage of, and they're not stupid. They're reading about this stuff and they're like, you know what? I see past the veil now.
Yep.
Because it doesn't benefit them. It benefited their parents and the boomers really big. It doesn't benefit them, and they wonder why. Why am I poor? Why does it take such a dramatic amount more money to buy a house than it did when I was, than my parents were a long time ago?
It's so crazy.
Go ahead.
The real estate thing is so interesting because that's like a great asset generally for what we're headed for in terms of instability. The things that did really well during the war, during any war, are agricultural, farmland, property, and commodities like silver, gold, iron, like copper, all these different things. So in real estate kind of fits into that, although not real estate in a bad market, which a lot of the United States markets. So that's really something really interesting. But I want to go into like the deflation stuff.
Yeah.
Because the Bitcoin is deflationary on purpose for the reasons we just discussed. Artificial intelligence.
Or it's actually, just to be, I
go
guess, grammatically correct. It's not, because a lot of people think it's deflationary. It's actually disinflationary because there is inflation in Bitcoin up until about 2040 when the last 21st million Bitcoin is issued. So it's at the moment it's disinflationary, and then it becomes non-inflationary. So deflationary would be like what Ethereum claims to be, which is, we're burning. So if we had a $21 million supply cap and like every month, I'm going to make this up. Every day 100 Bitcoin were burned. That's deflationary.
Yeah. Okay.
So it's disinflationary until
it's just
and then it's non-inflationary. So just because it's important.
No, I got it.
But the cause but usually the word inflation is used in relation to prices. Like, oh, prices going up, that's inflation. That's not true. It's a really poor. I hate the wording that society has accepted, including economists, because inflation means the money supply is being inflated. We're adding more to it, which causes prices to necessarily rise because there's more dollars chasing the same amount of products. Yeah. So, but what happens is if we were theoretically on a Bitcoin standard or even gold standard, right? And if you cannot artificially inflate the money supply, prices will tend to deflate, or they will go down in comparison to other, or in comparison to what it was. And it's just by nature, because technology is deflationary, right? As technology gets better, it's easier to, it's easier to make things, and it's cheaper to make things. And it's way cheaper to make a computer now than it was 20 years ago. Why does it cost, why am I paying like $2,000 for a computer now when I should be paying $500, right? Like, what's the deal with that? So,
and that's Moore's Law. Moore's Law plays into that. And Moore's Law is super interesting because now Moore's Law is done. But I find it very ironic that as soon as Moore's Law stops, now we've got a whole other law which is probably not to be named yet, which is, well, it's the bitter lesson. The bitter lesson, you just throw more compute at it. And then all of a sudden, each of the different layers of artificial intelligence, this brings us back to artificial intelligence. Also, we can have a conversation in terms of it being inflationary or deflationary as well, because
Absolutely.
now the intelligence, like, it's really interesting the last few months as I've done the mind meld with the LLMs. It just is not surprising to me anymore how powerful they are. But it is very surprising still. Like, there's nothing, and that is a deflation of my expectations, right? Like, so that's going somewhere. Where is that going while this other thing's happening?
Yeah. So I want to bring this into a little bit of, what do you call it, focus here on something. I'm pulling something up so I can look at it. I got a lot to talk about on this stuff. So, all right. One of the things we were just talking about is, the prices of home, or why, like, baby boomers, millennials, Gen Z. So I'm looking at one chart from the Federal Bureau of Labor and Statistics that says, for baby boomers, in 1985, the median household income for a baby boomer was I'm going to use it round numbers, 24,000. The median house was 84,000. Okay, so 24 to 80 income to house, 24 to 84. In 2022, it was 74,000 income to 468,000 in median house price, right?
Yep.
So you went from 4x your income to 468 divided by, it used to cost, not even 4 times, 3 times. 3 times your income. It now costs 6.3 times your income. So no wonder that, like, I can't afford anything, and it's getting out of control. Now baby boomers are like, hell yeah, this is great. So the young people are like, I can't even afford a starter home.
Yeah.
Now, so that's one piece. Then there's a whole other piece where we're talking about deflation. And I want to get to, you and I on a prior conversation, we're talking about Jeff Booth's book, The Price of Tomorrow, and why deflation is actually the key to an abundant future, which is sacrilegious to modern monetary theory. It doesn't work. Like, the one thing we all are scared of in this fiat debt-based economy is deflation, because everything falls apart. I'm going to get to that piece. I'm going to get to that piece in a second. I think that Bitcoin, AI, and
Other transformative
and population
deflation as well.
That we could actually be there may be a really interesting light at the end of this tunnel. So there's my hopium injection. So this is another post I saw yesterday on X by a guy, and he painted it perfectly. So he was talking about, if Bitcoin was your money, if you denominate your wealth in Bitcoin, like, let's just say you're worth $1 million and you put it all into Bitcoin, for instance, just theoretically. And instead of thinking about prices of things going up in dollars, you think about prices of things in terms of what you're storing your value in. So in 2020, Amazon Prime cost $119. 5 years later, it costs $139. So that's it. That's a US dollar increase of 17%. Right? However, if you were to price Bitcoin as how much, based on Bitcoin, it used to cost 1.7 million Satoshis, which is the unit of Bitcoin. So 1.7 million Satoshis got you Prime in 2020. Right now, it costs 117,000. So there is a decrease. There is the price of Amazon Prime is deflated by 93% in 5 years. And pretty much eggs down 85%, milk down 93%, even though they're up 24% in terms of US dollars. So it starts to show you that, wait a minute, deflation is a good thing if you're denominating your own wealth in something that is non-inflationary. So that's a really interesting thing. And I think that as more people see this, it creates more converts and more converts and more converts. Now, the hardest thing in the world is going to be, can the US or can the world economy ever get to a place to become, like, to have a Bitcoin based standard where this is the asset that underpins all commerce?
So
it's got a hell of a disincentivized elite structure to prevent that from happening unless they start to make so much money with Bitcoin too. They're gobbling it all up and they're like, okay, now that we own a good amount of it, now let's go ahead and do that. And then everybody else doesn't own it is left holding the bag.
Let's bring geopolitics into this because China, I was doing a deep dive on Bitcoin mining yesterday and Bitcoin regulation and the spread of data centers, which is now basically making AI, they're being able to convert the Bitcoin mining to the AI conversion as well. So they're doing both. So I was trying to figure out like how many data centers wouldn't have existed without Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a lot of them, and there's a lot not in China. But in 2021, there were a lot of in China. 80% of the mining was in China, and then the Chinese government, because for environmental concerns, decided to get rid of it. But it wasn't environmental concerns; it was capital controls. They were trying to keep all their money inside of China. So then it decentralized all over the world, which is a great thing for Bitcoin. And so geopolitically, the United States is now clearly pinning all of its hopes there. But you still have the BRICS. You still have China with its transformative technology, with its AI models, that's dropping open source models over. You still have Russia with its huge amounts of natural resources. And you have Brazil, which is an interesting story in of itself. But so like in India, I imagine India will probably go closer to the United States at some point. It feels like there's a long history of an alliance there, although maybe not with Pakistan. But geopolitically, where does that fit in with the theory? Because the United States is now very Bitcoin crypto. They're going to now use it as a weapon, as the previous administration was planning on using AI regulation as a weapon. Now, what do you think geopolitically? Like, where's China? How does that play into all this?
You know, it's hard to say. I mean, it's a big cluster F, and it's I don't. The honest truth is, I really don't know. What I do know, however, is the fact that this is going to continue to be more tumultuous as countries and sovereigns start to rebel against against what is happening.
Yeah.
And so we will see more and more, and the more chaos there is, things like Bitcoin thrive on chaos. Yeah. They're like, be as chaotic as you want. We're over here. They say TikTok, next block. Bitcoin is 95%, relatively speaking, the same as it was 15 years ago. It doesn't change. Yeah. It is the rock in the storm, and people are realizing that. They're like, oh, the fact that it is static, it's not innovating, but it's just getting more valuable. Like, maybe I'm going to go over here just to kind of like have something that doesn't change. One thing that doesn't change is everybody else is vying for, financial superiority, et cetera. I don't think like BRICS and yuan will never, ever, ever replace it. No, because it's too backwards. Capital controls. Nobody, you need transparency, et cetera. So I think it'll continue to happen until maybe there's enough upheaval, global geopolitical financial upheaval, that the people just start saving and spending in Bitcoin. Because the truth is, governments create currency, people create money.
Oh, interesting. Wait, go into that.
People decide. You and I decide what we're willing to trade for our time and energy on something. When a large number of people decide that gold was okay, you guys are trading seashells, we're trading gold, and then gold's better, and they go, gold's better. People start doing that. Then governments form up, and they go, okay, well, gold's the official thing. So when the people decide we're trading this, and then the people are the ones who run the world, that's how it might change. Now let's get into what does this really mean. Like Jeff Booth in the book Price of Tomorrow talks about deflation is such a powerful thing, and this is so hard for most people to grasp, but technological progress is inherently deflationary. As things advance, storage costs, cost of production goes down, but prices are going up because of more money in the supply. And you've got imagine this world where you're not forced to become an investor. You can just be a saver. So I look at saving as putting your money in a checking account. If you put money in a checking account, you're guaranteed to lose
whatever
It's
inflation
way
is.
more than 2% inflation a year, right?
Yeah.
But so now you're forced to be an investor. Well, what if you didn't have to? What if you knew that every dollar you kept, that prices were just going to get cheaper? That means you would not be forced to invest in startups and IPOs and penny stocks and real estate. Now, now cynics will argue, well, yeah, but now you're disincentivizing investment into the
Productive
economy,
economy.
productive economy. It's like, no,
Yeah.
what you're doing is you're disincentivizing stupid
Shitty.
investment.
The Ponzi schemes. You're
Yeah,
disincentivizing Ponzi schemes.
what you're saying is like, listen, if I'm going to give, let's say I've got $1 million worth of wealth stored in Bitcoin, and you come to me with a business idea that you want to start, and you need $100,000 or 100,000, whatever worth, let's just call it dollars. Now, if I'm a big player and I can always go borrow money and I know more money is coming, that's cool. But if I know that, look, if I give you this and you screw this up, I don't get this back. There's only so much, wealth in the world. I'm going to be a lot more, careful of where I invest my money, because what now you have to do is your investment better outperform the deflation of the price. Like, you better make my purchasing power greater. Right. So now let's tie what I call the three-legged stool together. If you follow Elon and a lot of other, economists, et cetera, they talk about the alarming trend of population, the decline in population growth. It's not population decline, because population is growing, but the growth rate is stagnating in all these developed countries, except for places like the Middle East and India, et cetera. Even China is having issues with birth rates. And in our existing system, birth rate decline is tragic, because that means there's less people to support the older people. As somebody removes themselves from the workforce, you need like typically two people, to take care of that. But now we've got AI, and AI is obsoleting people. So one person can now do the job of four people. I'm making this number up. So as population growth declines and birth rates decline, and we have less people to support the older people, but those people can be more productive with AI and technology, that could be the savior. But now, if we were ever under a real sound hard money, such as Bitcoin, and the prices of the cost of living decreases with these deflationary effects, that means the people who are there may not have to work until they're 60 years old, because you work hard, you save your money, you save enough money, the prices of things go down. It's like, hey, I don't have to work as hard because I got the capital. This is an insanely complex thing, and I'm only scratching the surface, and I'm not a professional economist, but it's a really, to sum up all the word salad I just said, if we were under a Bitcoin economy where cost of living decreases naturally with that monetary system, and AI makes less people as productive as more people, right? And the population growth declines, you could have this stabilizing homeostatic force that is anathema to all the doomsday calling. So that's my Pollyanna perspective.
Yeah. And it disarms the degrowthers, the accelerationist. I would say that fits into an accelerationist sort of viewpoint, and I like the vision there. What you said about saving in Bitcoin is really interesting, because it reframes it takes all. This is what I've learned from living in Argentina, is that money is fake. It's fake until you need to pay the bills. But up until that point, it's really fake. And the government can come in and say, oh, your money's only worth 50%. And it's in the bank and everything like that. So it's fake until it's real. Yeah. It's more real if it's backed by gold. It's potentially even more real if it's backed by Bitcoin. Yep. And there's the digital property. I really like the reframe of no, I shouldn't compare what I'm investing in terms of dollars, because that's inflating. I'll just compare it in terms of Bitcoin. Maybe I should start doing that.
It's a personal Bitcoin standard. There's a macro Bitcoin standard, which is, okay, what are things priced in? Well, they're priced in dollars. So I could say we don't live under a Bitcoin standard, at least not yet, and we may never in my lifetime. I'm okay with that, because if I theoretically have the majority or a large amount of savings stored in Bitcoin, and I'm not saying that I do, but I'm saying like theoretically, if people do, they because I don't own any Bitcoin.
Boating accident.
I lost it all in a boat accident. So, let's say somebody has their entire net worth in Bitcoin, right? Like, I'll just say, let's say they got a net worth of $5 million worth of Bitcoin. Everywhere they look, everything's getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. So now you're in a you've changed your own denominator because you're not storing it in an asset that is going down. Like, shit, this is easy. Like, hey, Amazon just got 97% cheaper, right? But that only works. Yeah, you can only have a personalized Bitcoin denominator or standard if you have assets in that you're using to fund your life. And so the government doesn't need a Bitcoin standard if a person takes it upon themselves. Now you take a risk because that means that your wealth may vary. It may be down 70 or 80%, any given cycle. And you have to be willing to deal with that right now. But as adoption increases, volatility will necessarily decrease. So,
which it already kind of feels like it has. Like it's staying pretty stable compared to. I'm sure it'll continue to be volatile, but maybe only in one direction.
Right. But I think that Bitcoin and AI have such an interesting synergy together. Like you mentioned, not only the
training,
potential economic effects, but like the data centers and miners. Because what you're seeing is a lot of miners are, if in the way Bitcoin mining works at a high level. You buy a bunch of ASIC computers that are, running these things in order to generate some Bitcoin, and they suck energy in. And if you are every 4 years, the amount of Bitcoin that you receive goes in half, and you hope that the price of Bitcoin is high enough to where you can still pay for your energy. But there's a lot of miners after the halving that get shut out of business because they're unable to make money. Because now they're making a lot less. They're making half as what they used to, but their electricity prices didn't go in half. So what happens is they leave the Bitcoin mining market, and you would think that would make everything more just more consolidated. And it does. It does consolidate miners. However, they leave, and they don't just necessarily quit and sell their shit on eBay. They can now end up powering artificial intelligence, AI, right? So now they have an outlet, which also incentivizes people to get into Bitcoin mining when things are really good because they know they have an extra outlet. But then not to get too nerdy on this, but then whenever miners leave and the hash rate, decreases, the difficulty rate to mine something decreases. So that increases the profitability, which brings more miners in, and it's this beautiful, beautiful system. So. Brilliant. There's one other thing. We were bringing up macroeconomics, and just yesterday, I watched one of the best videos, and 90% of the people would think it's the driest thing they've ever watched. But it's Tucker Carlson on X and YouTube interviewed this guy, Richard Werner, who is a world-renowned economist. And, he is very anti-central bank the way it works. He's not, I've never seen him say end the Fed, although he probably does think that. I've just synthesized like some of my things that I got from this yesterday, but I thought it was really fascinating. So number one, he was the first one, like way back a long time ago. I think he's the one who invented the term quantitative easing. Right? And his whole claim from a long time ago is that commercial banks, not the Fed, creates money out of nothing when they issue loans. Rather than, they don't lend out existing deposits, right? Like I don't think anybody who understands banking thinks that the only money that's being lent is money that the banks have. No, they're just saying, okay, I can lend out 9 times what I have in the bank. Like, do you understand how fractional?
Yeah, so the bank creates money, and it creates money by taking in money from savers and then
actually stop there, because you got the first part wrong. They do not create money by taking money from savers. So the way it works, the very simple version is, I have $100. I pay you $100. You put that in your bank. I'm going to say $1,000. You put that in your bank, right? You deposit it in your bank. Fractional reserve the rules say, and this might even be a little bit worse than what I'm about to say, but your bank now has $1,000, in its assets. It can now lend out $9,000 worth of dollars. And you like, what do you mean it can lend out 9,000? It only has one depositor. It's like rules say I can lend out nine. Well, what does that mean? It means it types a number on a board. So somebody else comes in and they borrow $9,000 from your bank. And now they pay off, they go buy a car for $9,000. And then the seller of that car puts it in his bank. Now that bank can lend $81,000. So every time a bank makes a loan, it is a ledger entry that allows them to create money out of thin air. The Federal Reserve is the one who allows this to happen. They backstop them. They go, oh, it's all good. We've got you covered. Well, where are you getting the money? Well, it's like, don't worry, we make it up too. So number one, he was the first one to really, really claim it's commercial banks that make money. And then he also said that macroeconomic theory is extremely flawed for a couple of reasons.
Commercial banks being what type of banks?
Just commercial banks,
like banks
JP Morgan Chase.
Okay, got it.
Your local,
wow, interesting.
Your local credit union. Every time they issue a loan, because of the way it works, they don't need to have their money in their ledger in order to issue money. They're just creating it out of thin air. The next big thing that he did was he realized that there's two types of money being created. So the first one is, let's say I own a factory and I'm borrowing money to buy a new machine that will help me be more productive. Okay. That's productive money. So I borrow this money, a new $100,000 was created. I buy a $100,000 machine that produces $200,000 worth of output. Great. GDP growth grew because I was more productive. The second type of money that is created, he realized, and it's all being lumped into one, but the second one is speculative money for asset purchases. So now I decide I'm going to borrow money in order to fund my company, that like an app company, or I'm going to borrow money to buy a large piece of real estate, or I'm going to borrow money to buy stocks. And this happens in Japan where it's called the carry trade. Japanese interest rates are like at near zero, if not interest. So big hedge funds and private equity, they borrow yen at zero interest. They buy assets over in the US, maybe they pay 5% interest, it's free money. It's arbitrage, right? So, but they're buying assets because they've got free access to all this debt. Now that bids up asset prices, and as asset prices go up, everything else goes up. But that doesn't mean the economy got more productive. It just means asset prices got more expensive. So he's the one, he calls it the disaggregation theory. Like let's not aggregate all money created. It's not all equal. Like some money actually makes productive people. Some money just makes rich people richer. And the Federal Reserve, the CIA went after it. They're like, hey, we're watching you. We don't like this. So the next thing he says, he goes, the Japanese economic crisis back in the 80s, Japanese was on fire. Everybody was worried about Japan. And then there was a huge bubble, right? And it burst. However, what he asserts is that the central banks, most importantly, the Fed, engineered that recession on purpose with the help of the Bank of Japan, because the bubble burst.
They needed to do something. It's this long line of tradition where they just need to do something, right? Because it's too big to fail.
And then what he argued, and supposedly he has the receipts and the proof, is that so Japan's economy went to hell in a handbag. Now they dropped rates to basically zero, but they did not start lending to the productive, like small businesses, et cetera. Those guys weren't getting the loans, but the people who were getting the loans were foreign companies and foreign hedge funds, as well as big companies, so they can buy assets. And that they put pressure on the Bank of the Japan to make this happen, to play the game, because this is the game. So it was this heavily distorted use of quantitative easing. Like, we're not helping
financial warfare.
We're not helping you guys be more productive. We're just helping the rich buy more assets. And so what he asserts, his entire thesis, as I understand it from all the research I did yesterday, is that the bigger the bank is, the more incentivized they are to lend money to big players who are trying to speculate. The least the bigger the bank, the less they make for small business loans. Small business loans are done by like
It's the same thing with companies. It's the same thing with when a company is selling to small businesses and medium businesses. They immediately, once they
bingo,
get big fish, they start selling to other to
bingo.
stumps. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so he asserts that a decentralized banking system. Now, I don't know if he talks
Whoa.
about Bitcoin or anything else,
Interesting.
but his whole assertion is that
Yeah.
decentralized banking is what it
Ooh, I
should
like
be.
that.
It should be a lot of small banks
Yeah.
making loans to their communities,
Yeah.
to individuals who are trying to improve their communities,
Yeah.
not the big, too big to fail banks
Yeah.
who are running up the price of everything else because they're creating trillions of dollars out of thin air, right? So the big problem with that is that goes against the elite narrative. The ones who are in charge, they want bigger banks. The ones who pull all the strings, they want the bigger banks because they're getting richer.
Yeah.
So he's saying decentralized small banks are the key to making it work. And so I just found it insanely interesting. I'll send you some of the research. I've got the video and a whole Gemini thread like breaking down all of his stuff. I'll send it to you because it's
Yeah.
crazy fascinating.
It solves the problem. Go for it.
The end of I guess at the end of the day, the bottom line story is too big to fail. Central banks are bad, very, very bad for the economy at whole. They're very good for the people in power.
Yep.
The only way to fight them is to do something they cannot control, and that finding a way to have your purchasing power go up over time without taking an extraordinary risk is the name of the game. And right now, in order to do that, you have to do one thing: buy assets. Assets are the name of the game in an inflationary economy. And to me, there is one asset that rules them all if you can stomach the volatility, and that's Bitcoin. Because you have to understand it to realize that. But that's why you don't necessarily put everything into Bitcoin, because if you do risk the volatility going down 80%, yeah, it may hurt you, but it's the only thing that gets the highest return with the greatest amount of fundamental stability. So
Cool. Thank you so much. How can people find more about you?
they can come over for dinner. You can email me, Brad at acceleratedintelligence.ai, or go visit acceleratedintelligence.ai, jump on the newsletter. I actually don't yet talk that much about macroeconomics and Bitcoin, et cetera. I would love to. I talk a lot more about innovation, AI, business, et cetera, but I'll probably be going more this way because I really love it.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Thank you.